Welcome to Business Success Tips, where you learn to make more money in less time and have a lot more fun. My name is Paul Sanneman. I'm founder of Contractor Staffing Source, where we help contractors build and keep great teams. My guest this morning is Greg Hayne from Hayne Coaching Group. And Greg contacted me and said, I've got some great new stuff I want to share with you. And I went, great, we should do a podcast about it. So here he is. So, Greg, you're on.
Thanks, Paul. The last time we talked, I think our conversation was probably around the fact that I work with mainly commercial roofing contractors and help them grow their service departments. But we also have these peer groups where we bring non-competing contractors together. I think that was one of the things we talked about. And one of the things that's kind of been interesting about these peer groups is, first of all, everybody in these groups are successful people. There's different levels of success, but they're all successful. And I walked into a peer group meeting over a year ago, and I started asking some questions. I got a little suspicious. And I asked them, how many of you are bored or burned out or struggling with some aspect of your business? And let me see a show of hands. They put up their hands. All of them did.
No surprise.
No surprise. And so what we started doing is we started taking some time in these meetings to do some presentations to help them figure out how to, let's say, get unstuck.
Okay.
And it's been interesting because after I did the first presentation, which has been over a year ago, normally when I do a presentation, I ask for questions and I get a lot of questions. I did this presentation, I got no questions, none.
That's sort of scary.
That's
Really?
very curious. So then I went to the next group because the meetings are kind of back to back. And same thing, no question. I said, okay, hang on. And I know these people really well. I said, normally I get questions. Why no questions? Is it because this is not interesting to you? Or is this because it's resonating? They said, oh, this is resonating.
Well, maybe it's scary for them to share that information to other
What?
people, I think.
So in that setting, that it's not scary for them to share that there's stuff that's not perfect in their lives. The reality is
Mhm.
none of our lives are perfect,
None of our lives are perfect. Absolutely.
and so we continue to do this. I've done a little research. It's interesting. So one of the pieces of research I got is that 82% of white collar workers, so that's anybody in the office, right? They're burned out and feel stuck.
Well, it's very interesting because I was just listen. I just know a lot of Deepak Chopra, and he worked for
Yeah, yeah,
this huge polling company. You know, whatever the biggest polling company in the world is, Gallup.
yeah,
And they did a survey around the world, not just America, around the world. And only 20% of the people that work love what they do.
yeah. And I think I also got something from Gallup, which says that over 50% of the Gen X, millennials, and baby boomers, over 50% regret their career choices. Now, this plays right into your work because you help people staff.
Right.
So when you have employees come to you looking for work, it seems to me that there's a lot of reasons for this, but a lot of them boil down to one of two things. Either they like their job, but they don't like the company, or they can't get the promotion they want or whatever, and so they're looking, or they've discovered that they really don't like what they're doing. And instead of doing this, they'd rather do that, and they have the skills for it, and they hope you help them do it. Is that fair?
Well, I would say it's in it because we do a lot of assessments, right? And
Yeah,
one of our assessments say, is this the job that you're going to love to do? That's part of the deal. If you don't like what you're doing, the assessment will show that. And we don't hire people that don't want the job.
yeah,
And it's interesting because we've done some little research ourselves, and most people leave their employer because they're not respected, they're not treated right, they don't feel there's any place they can go. I mean, compensation is like number four.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
not big on the list. And so, when you're trying to keep people on board or recruit people, the most important is thing, can you find a job that you love to do? Otherwise, you should do something else. I always had a saying when I say, don't
Yeah.
do anything for money you wouldn't do for free.
Um, the challenge though that many of these roofers have is that so they're successful human beings, Some of them are wildly financially successful. They make lots of money
Mhm.
and they have a constraint. And so let's say they're a roofing contractor and what they really want to do is do pottery.
Okay.
Well, they know they're not going to make the kind of money that they do now doing pottery, but they've got obligations. They got a mortgage. They've got kids that have expectations. They may have a wife or a husband that has expectations of a standard of living, and so they feel trapped. And and the other thing that's interesting is so there's a story I tell that applies not just to one specific individual. It happens to be one specific individual, but it's the story of many of the people in these groups. The guy gets out of college. He gets a job, happens to be working for a roofing company, and they put him to work selling. And well, he's pretty good at sales. So some time goes by, and they decide to put him in charge of sales. He does good at that. And then somewhere along the line, somebody goes, geez, I wonder if he could help us on the project side. And jump down the road 10 years, he's now the general manager of this company.
Right.
And then 3 years later, the boss walks in, says, I've decided to retire early. I'm going to sell the business to you, you, and you. And this guy now owns 40% of this company that's $40 million a year. And this was not a plan.
No.
He just stumbled into this. Now, he was good. All right. He was competent, but he didn't have a plan. And I think most people that when they look at their employment history, it's not like they at 18 they said, well, this is what I'm going to do, and 20 years later that's what they're doing. That's not the way
Well,
it
I would
works.
say, Sam, clearly most people have, I'm going to call it organic job development.
Yeah,
They,
yeah,
I mean, they got a degree in college and they couldn't make a living, so they went to work for a remodeling company because it made more money. They became a carpenter. Then pretty soon they're making more money as a carpenter than they would as a teacher or something else. And then 20 years down the line, they're still a carpenter and their body's hurting and going, why did I do this?
yes, exactly right. And so it could be the body's hurting, or it could be that the intellectual challenges that they have doing the work don't align the way they really
Right.
need to as well. That's where the
Mhm.
burnout comes in.
Right.
So the thing so what we've been doing in these peer groups is we've been helping these guys figure out how to plan for what's next. And it's been fascinating because I've reinvented myself many times in my life. I went from
Me too.
being a general contractor to roofing contractor to roofing consultant to trainer roofing contractor service departments. And each of these things has been an evolutionary step for me. And all of them, fortunately, have been reasonably well aligned with what I do.
Hmm.
But now when I need something new and different, I kind of know how to figure out what to do. And so we've been teaching that. We've even done a course, if you will, a membership called What's Next? Navigating Life's Transitions for people that are interested. And and in there, we just simply share the tools that we use when we need something new,
I
because
mean, there's a couple books that come to mind. One is Build to Sell, which is a good book because whether you're going to sell your business now, you should build it to sell it so it runs without you. That's just a given in any good business. The second one is I used to in my younger hippie days, I taught a lot of seminars and went to all the, asked all these growth creepy things when I was younger. And one of the exercises I did, I'll never forget it. It said, make a list of 10 things that you love to do. Play could be music, travel, talk to people, sell stuff. So you make a list of 10 things you love to do. And then you mark on that list how many of those you do on a regular basis in your job and get paid for. I remember I did that, and it was two. And I said, screw this. And I quit my job the next day. I went, this is just dumb because the woman next to me had 10 out of 10. And I went, that's way better than me. So that's an exercise you might consider is make a list of 10 things you love to do. And if you're not doing most of those in your job, you should change jobs or build your company to sell it because life is too short.
and the challenge a lot of people, the legitimate challenge that a lot of people have is that they may be doing only two or less. Okay. That
Mhm.
happens to some people, but they've got these constraints. They've got a mortgage. They've got mouths to feed at home. The wife or the husband may have certain kinds of expectations for standard of living, and they don't see how to get from where they are to where they want to go.
Hmm.
And that's
I
a
think
real
I think
challenge.
that's something that you really need, in my opinion, a coach or somebody like yourself, because
Yeah,
you sort of can't see the forest for the trees. So
yeah,
I really recommend that you hire an outside person like yourself, especially, to look at it objectively and to ask the hard questions that you may not want to ask or afraid to ask, and then
yeah.
have some solutions. Say, well, great. I'm making, pick a number, I'm making $200,000 a year doing a job I hate and I want to be a potter. I'm stuck. What do I do now? Right?
Yeah.
There are solutions, but you've got to work with somebody like yourself to find those solutions and create a path to that solution versus just being stuck, work until you die, which is a bad, a bad answer.
Good plan. And not only that, but the solution that most people are looking for, it when they finally find it, it all makes sense, but it's often not obvious.
Right.
It often takes some iterations, it takes some fiddling, and and so it can take a year or it can take two to figure out what that should be. And in our society today, everybody wants the answer now.
No, that's a problem because I was in Deepak the other day and he said, they did an experiment and they said, and they hit a clock, right, in a room, and they had one clock that was running faster than normal time and one clock that was running slower than normal time. And literally the one that was running faster, people had more anxiety, got more shook up, had a higher heart rate, had just poorer health, more stress, just because this clock was going faster. They had somebody else running the slower clock, they had lower heart rate, they had basically better physical condition because the clock was running slower. And we create those clocks ourselves.
Absolutely, we do.
So
Time
I
is
think, so I
yeah.
mean, we have enough we need to, don't ever say you don't have enough time. It's a bad affirmation because you got all the time to do what you want to do. And
Well,
so to I think, Greg, you probably got a good idea. If you don't love what you do and you want to find a way to find something that you do, that little thing I said, list the 10 things. And if you don't have, 8 out of 10, you should go find something else. But I think calling somebody like you, Greg, somebody who look from the outside and say, look, let's come up with a plan. You don't have to just give up, right?
yeah. Well, it in one of my iterations, I was a roofing consultant, and I had a great customer base, quality companies. They loved me. I was doing good work for them. But after I'd done it for like 10, 12 years, it's like something's wrong here. And what was wrong was that I wasn't getting the kind of challenges I wanted anymore. I mean, I would get a phone call like once a week from a client, and I would go, "They did what?" But I always knew how to find the solution. I may didn't, I had to get there, but I knew the steps. And so my work became a simple exchange of my expertise, experience for money. Now, there's nothing illegal or immoral about that, but I wasn't getting those intangible things
Right.
that get me
Well,
excited.
if you weren't looking to going to work on Monday morning, if you're not, you should change your
Right,
job. I mean,
right,
so I said, don't do anything for money you wouldn't do for free.
right.
Um, and I mean, I personally been through, I mean, I remember, um, I was way back when I was selling life insurance. I was like I was number one. I was like making tons of money and everything was, and I went and I got an ulcer and said, I'm done. I was like 21 and got an ulcer. I said, I don't care how much money I'm making. I'm not going to sell life insurance. And then went to the school of ministry, which is a real switch from that, right?
Yeah,
And then,
yeah.
so after the school of ministry, but ever since then, I have been focused on, I don't do anything that's not fun.
Well, but going from life, in this case, life insurance, and then looking at a spiritual solution is really common for a lot of people. Should be more common for some, but we don't want to delve into religion today. But there's a difference between religion and spirituality,
Right.
and when you talk about doing what you love, that's a spiritual thing.
Well, it is. I always tell people, I have an exercise. I said, if you were going to die in 3 years, I don't say a year because then we got to guess, but I said, if you were going to die in 3 years, what would you change in your life? And then I tell people they should just do it because you may die in 3 years. And
Yes,
and if you have the plan and you're not, if you look you're going to die in 3 years, you're going to change, then you should start changing things now
yeah.
because life is short.
Well,
Um,
I'm now 72. the runway is getting shorter.
I'm 75, so I totally get it, right?
Yeah,
It's like, dude.
yeah,
So, no, I agree. And I think, being passionate about the most important thing for longevity is passionate about what you do and lack of stress. I mean, you can eat healthy, all that kind of stuff. I mean, because I do all that kind of stuff and, I'm real healthy. I think I'm 58 biologically, but I think the key to it is I love what I do. And I
yeah.
think it's important that if you don't love what you do, you're definitely shortening your lifespan for sure.
Ben Franklin is quoted as saying that um, something along the lines of many people die at 25, but their bodies don't stop until they're 75.
Right, that's true. Or
And
it's sort of said most people live
unfortunately,
lives of quiet desperation, which makes no sense.
yes,
So, so Greg, this is all good stuff. So, how if somebody's listening to this and it sort of resonates with them, they go, "Yeah, I made the list. I don't like what I do, but I'm making good money, and I've got a house payment, and I've got all these employees depend on me, and whatever." So they're getting the income they want, but they're not giving the satisfaction of the job. That they don't look forward to going to work on Monday. In fact, they did a survey, and most people die on Monday morning at 9 o'clock. It's crazy, but it's true. I mean, not it's statistically way out of proportion to when most people die. So if you don't love what you do and you want to like look at the alternatives, so Greg, how do they get a hold of you, and how does one get into that process?
so first of all, if they want to talk to me, I'll be glad to talk to them. They can go to Hayne Coaching Group.com. Um, but there's an expression by the mystic Rumi that says, "What you are seeking is seeking you."
Hmm.
And so I figured all this out for myself, and I'll be glad to talk to people. But I believe that the answers that they need are already inside of them. Now, having a
Right,
coach can be helpful in asking the questions to draw that to the surface. There's no question about that.
right,
So
agreed.
having a coach can be helpful. But I'll be glad to talk to people. I don't
So
charge
I
people.
would say, if you don't love what you do, and you're wondering where do I go? And it's especially because a lot of things, if you go to any specific religion, a lot of stuff comes with a lot of baggage. No offense, but
Oh, it
a
does.
lot of the spiritual teachings comes with a lot of baggage.
Yes.
And so if you don't want to like get the baggage, you just want to get some of the answers, I would suggest call Greg and have a conversation. It's only an hour, right? Have a conversation with Greg and maybe you could come up with some solutions, right?
I'll be glad to talk to them.
Well, thanks, Greg. I really appreciate this. And I do think a lot of people have this issue. And I know in my coaching, I said, I use those two examples all the time. If you don't love what you do, you need to change because you are going to die. That's the only given. And I guarantee you're going to die sooner if you don't love what you do than if you do. So if you don't want to hasten your own death, I clearly recommend you find a way to be passionate and get up, be excited and love what you do because that's one of the most important things for mental, physical, and spiritual health that I know.
People looking at this, when they find out that you're 75 and I'm 72, I bet most of them are surprised.
That's true. Well,
Because
I did a test. I'm biologically 58, whatever that means. I took all these tests and stuff. So, but I think I married my trainer, which helped, right? But
that does
also,
help.
but my favorite thing to do is work. I mean, I love it. And I
Yeah,
think if you don't love what you do, and I think that's part of our recruiting. We want to find people that love being a carpenter or love being a whatever they do. And that's part of it because if you don't, you should go do something else, man. Life is too short.
it is. This
Thanks,
is
Rick. I
fun.
appreciate being here. And
Uh,
Greg, I'm going to get a hold of you again one more time.
so Hayne, Hayne, Hayne Coaching Group.com.
Thanks, Greg. I really appreciate that.
Thanks, Paul.